everyone, today I wanted to talk about a project that I ran a couple of years ago, but I've never talked about it on here, and something I just really wanted to share. I am so proud of what we achieved. So I ran the project, but a number of people were involved, and we renovated an iconic red British phone box and we turned it into a book swap. And so I wanted to share this because purely, we're book lovers. We're going to love a story about making a book swap. So I really hope you like it from that side of things. I also, perhaps some people will find this video who are looking at doing a similar project. So maybe you're renovating a phone box, maybe you're making a book swap and you're looking for some tips. And in this video, I want to go through the whole experience, how we went about it, why we did it. But also, I'm really passionate about community projects and community engagement. I'm involved in a few local organisations. I've ran a few events and I try to go to events and get really involved because, look, if you asked me what my favourite word is, I would say community. I'm that person, but I truly believe it. And I really think that at the moment with all the stuff in the news, and I don't want to talk about it and go into detail with it, but I feel like we're all just feeling a bit helpless, and it feels like a lot. Sometimes I read things and I feel like, it's almost like I can't catch my breath and I can't do anything about it. Like there's no action I feel like I can take about so many things. But what I can do is I can get involved in my community. And I truly believe that if we do things that need doing, if we create events, if we go to things, if we get involved, if we help where help is needed, if we take care of where we live, that starts something and it's a positive action to take. Obviously renovating a phone box, there's an aesthetic side to it, and that's really lovely to make a place more sort of pleasing and so that people aren't seeing the dilapidated phone box and feeling a bit frustrated. It's a nice thing. People are coming together to share books. People are having conversations. People are getting involved. We're sharing ideas by having the swapping of books. There's all those kinds of things. If we build an event or whatever we do within our community, we're hoping to bring people together. We're hoping to improve well-being and connections and all those things and pride in where we live. But I also believe, as somebody who writes about the environment, that there's an aspect of that as well. If we feel fulfilled, if we feel engaged and involved, and we start to notice our local environment and we start to take care of, having more wildlife, having more green spaces, taking care of them when they're there, it has a ripple effect in so many different areas, and it's so important. And I really truly believe if you feel like you can't do anything in this current climate, look for something in your community, and if there isn't anything, then make something. I live by a mantra of, if you notice passing through your brain the words somebody ought to do something about that, well, who is somebody? Who is that? Because if everybody's noticing that thing and going, somebody ought to do something about that, and nobody's actually doing anything, then the thing doesn't get done. Who is somebody? And sometimes that somebody is you. And in the case of the phone box, that is exactly what happened. I noticed that emotion and I realised that the somebody was going to have to be me. They say, don't they, if not you, then who? And if you notice that, start to notice it. Start to notice yourself go, somebody should. And then ask yourself, who is that somebody? And sometimes you're not the person. Sometimes you've got too much going on or you don't have the skill set. But at times it can be you. And it makes a difference if it is you. You really make such a huge difference, because just something nice that makes someone smile, the ripple effect of just that is huge. And yeah, the people in your community who do things, who make things happen, and then if you get involved or you go to the thing they built or you use the thing that they built, it's bigger than you realise, I really, really like that. I hope you can tell. This is core for me. I'm the chair of 2 committees, and those committees are things which are involved in well-being and bringing people together. And I have spearheaded events, and I've been on committees that have made events, and I have worked within my community. Anyway, I could go on about this forever. Let's talk about the phone box. So where I used to live, there was a little area where you still have a duck pond. When I moved in, that duck pond was really cute. And when my eldest was little, we'd go and sit by the duck pond. And so the duck pond is relevant. And then this phone box, which was in a sorry state, but it got worse. So over the course of a couple of years, the duck pond, which was water runoff from the road, then going sort of through a drainage system and making this little duck pond, really lovely. It got kind of blocked up and then it got overgrown, and it was just this sort of weedy area with just a sad duck house on the side and no ducks. They went elsewhere. And it was sad because where I live, there's like, the ducks would walk along the road, and I grew up with something similar. I'll tell you a story, a little aside. When I was growing up, we used to go and feed the ducks, and one time the ducks followed us home. They found out where we lived. They used to knock. It's a true story. My husband doesn't believe me, but the ducks would come and knock on the door for bread at that time. No, you're not supposed to give ducks bread, but we didn't know that in the 90s. Ducks used to knock on our door. So anyway, I like ducks, okay? And there was this duck pond, got all silted up. The ducks left. We no longer had them popping down the road. And we had this sign that was like warning ducks, but there were no ducks. It was sad. And then there's also this phone box that over time, more and more, the paint peeled off. It was already bad, but it got worse. The glazing bars were broken. Loads of the pieces of glazing were missing, smashed. It was really nasty inside. It smelt of wee, like it was horrible. And it just got worse and worse because when something is not nice, I think people are more likely to not care about it and to actually actively damage it because it's sort of fun, you know? So it just spiraled. And this little area was on my dog walk every day. So I would walk past and every day I'd go, someone should do something about that. And it didn't sink in that I was saying it, even though it's something that I try to notice about myself. And on my dog walks, I would be thinking, as you do, sort of mind is wandering all over the place, and I would think, oh, wouldn't it be cool if that was a book swap? Because I've seen these phone boxes that get made into book swaps, or like a defibrillator, or there's loads of things that these phone boxes get converted into, and they're really cool. So community swaps or community resources, or just like make it look nice again. And I would also notice on my dog walks that this is quite a touristy area, and there would be, obviously I'm being, you know, as opaque as I can about where I live, right? So please excuse the kind of lack of details in some areas of this story. And I'll try and share images where I can, where it's like not obvious where this is. Anyway, it's quite a touristy area, and tourists would walk past because it was on a route that tourists would take. And they take photos with this horrible phone box that was, I mean, what were they showing people? What were they putting on their social media? Here's me with this really old thing that looks like it's awful. So I kind of noticed that this would be a thing, even if it just looked nice again, that people would enjoy, tourists would enjoy, locals would enjoy, it would bring the area up a bit. And it just, you know, it made me sad. And then one particular day, I was walking past it and I noticed there was a poster in it, and I thought, oh, what's that? And I looked, and there was a big sign up from BT, British Telecom, saying, we are decommissioning this phone box because it's not used. I mean, what phone boxes are used these days? Seriously. I think back to when I was a kid and you had to use them so that you could ring and say, I'm lost, or my friend didn't turn up, or I'm not coming home for another 3 hours, or whatever it would be, or I missed my bus. Now, obviously, we don't use them. I don't know that anybody would have ever used that phone box anymore. So, yeah, it's being decommissioned. And I thought, oh, that's really sad. That's the end of that then. So BT are going to take the phone out, take the phone box away, and it's gone. And it's this iconic thing that people were taking photos with. And it could be really cool and amazing, but it's going to go. And then I realised what I'd been doing for years in saying, what a shame, somebody should... It's me, isn't it? That's what I realised. I was like, I should, right, okay. So I spoke to my husband about it and said, do you know what? I've had this idea for ages about turning it into a book swap. Perhaps I should put together a bit of a committee and see if we can do something about this. And he was like, here we go again. So I put on our local Facebook page and said, I've just seen this poster go up. What does everybody think? You know, would it be a good idea to make this into a book swap? What do we think? Book swap, plant swap, defibrillator? What could it be? Do people think it's worth renovating it, holding on to it? Or do we just let BT take it because it's manky. And overwhelmingly people were like, oh yeah, no, let's change it. Let's do something about it. Let's have the former glory of the iconic phone box back and let's turn it into a book swap. There's a defibrillator nearby. So they were like, no, we don't need a defibrillator. Maybe we could have a plant swap. But book swap was like, yeah, let's do it. This is really cool. So I was like, okay, do people want to get in on that if we got a bit of interest? And people were like, yeah, let's do it. So I thought, okay, if I've got a team of people who can help me, then, because I have no idea, I've never done this before, I can kind of project manage. Let's go from there. Let's do this. So if you're involved in this kind of project, one of the first things to do is speak to the people in charge. So I spoke to the parish council and said, well, this is an idea that I've had. We've been talking to the community. What happens here? So the parish council said to me, look, some people come to us and say, somebody ought to, and we love that you haven't, that you've come and said, I want to do something about this. And they said, that's fantastic. We need more people doing that. So just to back up what I was saying, the parish council, a lot of councillors are giving up free time. Some of them might be retired or some of them aren't. They're literally just doing it in tiny minutes in their day, going to these meetings, help make decisions, help to improve and build their community. So they're not just... they haven't got masses of time to do all of the things when I'm sure you can imagine what it's like. People in a community going, we should have, in our community, people keep talking about a roundabout and it would be great to have it, but that costs millions of pounds. So yeah, people have suggestions, but what you need is people suggesting the solutions or being part of the solution. So the parish council was super keen. And they said, actually, somebody's doing exactly the same thing for the duck pond. Somebody is running a thing to make the duck pond nice. So wouldn't this be awesome? The duck pond will get fixed. The phone box will be made lovely again. That can be a book swap, little area where people can sit and watch the ducks and read the book. Fantastic. What a good idea. Let's do it. So what they said is, we will support you. We're not doing it, but we will support you if you need support. So I said, okay, first thing I need support with is that when a phone box is taken over, you adopt it. And it actually only costs £1. That phone box cost £1. And you say to BT, actually, we want to have this, and they charge you that nominal fee so that you are buying the phone box and adopting it. And then they take the phone out and sort of withdraw themselves from the phone box, and then it is yours. So I said, I do not want to own personally a phone box. So if you as the parish council can own it, and then going forward, if I leave the area or whatever, that belongs to the community, not to me, because what am I going to do with a phone box? That seems like the best way forward. So they said, yep, we'll do that. But let's take this whole idea to a parish council meeting and have a discussion about, are we definitely behind this? Are we going to adopt this phone box, and how does this move forward? So I went to a parish council meeting online. As I say, this was 2020. I don't know if they're in person now, but at that time they were online. And I just remembered all that stuff in COVID. Was it a parish council meeting that went mad? Anyway, so I went to this meeting and we discussed what I was saying. We're going to renovate this phone box, make it nice again. We're going to make it into a book swap. And overwhelmingly, the council were on board, except for one individual who said, well, actually, and I had some people in the community say the same thing. And they said, well, actually, we think it might get damaged again. And what we'd like to do is actually take that phone box and put it in a nicer part of the local area, like the nicest part, and where it's far less likely to be damaged. Not personally a sentiment I agree with. I think that just assuming that because something is somewhere less aesthetically pleasing or less wealthy or whatever it might be does not mean that it won't be valued. It was also on like a thoroughfare with people who weren't local going past. So they were like, let's take it away from there, put it somewhere nicer, and we'll create the book swap there. And I sort of made my case and said, actually, that really doesn't sit with what I believe. And I want to see this little patch in particular regenerated. And I don't believe that you should have everything nice in the nice bit. All you get then is more and more disparity, that actually what we should have is little lovely things everywhere. And I said, look, if it gets damaged, we deal with that then. We either fix it or maybe we look at moving it if it's something that happens all the time. But I don't think it will. I really don't. And it sort of went back and forth, and I can understand their view, although I don't agree with it. And in the end, I said, well, look, frankly, if you move it, I'm not going to be visiting it all the time. I'm not going to be walking past it, and I'm not on board with what you're suggesting. So frankly, it won't be me doing it. You'll have to find someone else to renovate it. And that's fine if that's what you want to do, but I am only doing it if it stays where it is. Because I'm that guy. And they agreed to keep it where it was and at least see how it went. And then if it didn't work in its current location, they could talk about moving it, and that could be a community decision. And that's the thing, it's a community decision. I had the evidence from what I'd asked about on the Facebook page. But if community members are welcome at these things, by going to them, you get your say. You can always find out what's on the agenda, what they're going to be discussing, and then you have an opportunity to give your opinion. And of course, everyone has their own opinions. And although I don't agree with this person's opinion, it was right that their opinion was aired and discussed, and that we could wrangle out what we were going to do. So anyway, they decided, I'm sorry, this is quite a long story. Anyone who's been on this channel for a while will not be surprised. So they agreed to adopt it, and we talked about the fact that I would apply for grants, and then if needed we would fundraise, but also if there was any issue the parish council would support financially depending on what that ask was, and that once the work was done, it was nothing further to do with me. It belonged to the council and was not my problem. And there had been precedent in our area because someone else had done a big project in our area to renovate something, which again, they'd handed to the parish council. And so, yeah, it's like, this is not, we need to recognise this is a community asset and not mine. So all that was agreed upon. So once that meeting was done, then I could move forward. So the first thing I did was I had to collect quotes. And I started to talk to the people who'd said, I'll help. And I was like, well, could you get a quote for this? Could you? Look, there are certain individuals who are people who are on committees, right? I'm on multiple committees. Do you know, it's not even being on a committee. They're the doers. There are doers in communities. There are also people who, with the best will in the world, say they'll do things. And it might be that stuff comes up, or it was kind of words, and in reality, they don't really have the time or the... I think it takes a certain amount of like motivation to do these things and be like, oh, I must do that community project, because also it's not self-serving. And again, I don't mean that in a horrible way, but we all need to do the things we need to do for us and our families and work, and you know, that is all a lot. And so for someone to go, oh, and also that thing that's for other people, that is a hard thing to find the time and the motivation and the whatever. And I get it, that's no blame. I feel like there are certain people with certain personality types who will get involved in stuff and also will push forward with stuff. So when I went back to the community, it turned out that there were a couple of people who did really help out loads, but for the most part, it was me. And that's fine. And I've been in that position before, and I was like, okay, fine. So let's just go through it step by step. It will take a bit longer, and let's just see if I'm capable, because I don't know. The first thing is getting quotes. Now, I work as an author and a teacher. I do not know how one fixes a phone box. I do not really know how to put a shelf up, because I have a husband who is amazing at DIY, and so I've never had to concern myself with such things. That's his role. He's very good at it. So I'm not very handy, okay? And so even like knowing what had to be done and knowing the words, that might sound ridiculous, but it was really hard. And my husband was amazing with me kind of going, what do you do? How do you do this? I've said I'm going to do it. I don't actually know how. I was hoping I'd have like a little committee and be like, so guys, like, what next? Anyway, so we figured it out and kind of wrote out the process. So the phone box, hopefully I can insert pictures, was very much the leaning tower of phone box. And so it needed to have the base fixed. So what we were hoping is phone box could be taken away, base remade, the phone box would be away, being rebuilt, sandblasted, painted, all of the stuff done to it, and then the phone box would be brought back and put on there. Now they are enormously heavy, but that was the theory of how the timeline would work. So what we needed was a builder, and we also needed all the bits. I had to buy all of the word I'm thinking of is equipment. That's not it. Parts. Can you see how I was not necessarily the right person to do this? And we needed a metal fabricator to take it away, fix the glazing bars, do all the things to it. So those were the phone calls I started to make. And typically you want to get sort of 3 quotes for anything and weigh those up. The metal fabricator was the hardest bit, because I was like, I don't even know what to ask. And you're phoning people and like, I need you to fix the things that hold the glass. I don't know. So I had my husband like tell me the words. I was like, tell me what I'm saying to these people. Because look, we all know if you're clearly an idiot that doesn't know what you're talking about, the price might not be so favourable. So it was really challenging to call people and say, is this a thing you do? And actually, I only found one person who could do it, who was like, yeah, I've actually done something similar, because they just don't work with those specific metals or those specific conditions. It was a lot of phone calls. It was a lot of asking people I knew who worked in construction and saying, who do you know? And how could this work? And being given contacts. So we found a local builder who would help us. We found a fairly local metal fabricator who was willing to do the work. And I also found another local person who was willing to build a shelving unit bespoke for it. And we also discussed with the local gardening association that we could add into this whole thing a community garden, because there'd been this talk about a plant swap, that we could have the garden association having like a community garden where people could come and cut herbs and take plants and whatever. So they came in on it, that we would build this little area that they could take charge of and would belong to them. So it would become this community space alongside the duck pond. Lovely, very nice. So with all the quotes in place, I then I applied for a grant. And if you are doing these kinds of things, grants are a really good way to go. Fundraising is an unknown entity in this economic climate. It's not so easy. So I think grants are definitely, in the things I'm involved in, we have applied for grants and been fortunate enough to get them in most cases. So you can go for big national grants. There are a few organisations that give them. You also might have local organisations that give grants for particular kinds of projects. And sometimes there's even things where people have like bequeathed money for certain uses. So have a search around and see if there's someone in your community who is good at grants, because that's really helpful if you can ask them and they say, oh yeah, for that kind of project, this kind of grant would go well for you. And you just fill it all in. And this is again where having the parish council on board was really helpful, because I needed their official details and their bank statements and all these things. So they came in on the grant application process and were really, really helpful there. So we applied for the grant, we were given the grant, absolutely brilliant. And so the money landed with the parish council, and then I could start work. And it was not as easy as we thought. So in a nutshell, first of all, it turned out that it was not going to be possible to take the phone box away. That wasn't going to work. So all that work was going to be done in situ. So then the builder had to look at rebuilding this base for the phone box, but with the phone box on it, which is not so easy. And he was amazing. He came in and sort of shored up the phone box so that it was straight. And then he managed to sort of infill the base for it. It was amazing. I didn't think he'd be able to do it, but he did. So yeah, fantastic. So the base was the first thing that got done. The metal fabricator then came and took the door, because the door was detachable, and the door was where most of the damage was, where we had all these missing glazing bars. So he took the door away and dealt with that at his workshop. So he went and did that. Then he sort of came back on site and he dealt with other bits of damage, and he not sandblasted. He was going to sandblast it, but because it couldn't go away, he, what's the word? Sanded. It wasn't sanded though. It's like industrial, whatever. He took the paint off, I don't know. So he dealt with all of that stuff. In the meantime, we're getting progress on the little garden structure, and the guy making the shelves is making the shelves. We also discover that there are electrics attached to the phone box because the phone box had lights. So there's a whole discussion of, do we want to keep it and have lights attached so that it lights up with little signs that either say telephone or phone box, or do we just disconnect it? And we decided to disconnect it. So I then had to find an electrician who was willing to come and deal with that and disconnect the electrics. That was an unforeseen thing that had to happen. Be aware, if you're renovating a phone box, they do have an electricity connection that we thought BT would take, but they didn't. They just took the phone. So the other thing was that I had to buy all of the parts. And again, I don't know how many parts or what I need. I've got no idea. So anyway, I had to buy all of the glass bits, the right kind of paint, because it's a specific colour and type of paint, and the primer, and the little signs. We decided to go with telephone because we thought it was cute. And did we buy anything else? I think there were like things like hinges and things that had been damaged. So the metal fabricator was like, we need these parts, we're missing these. So I bought all of the bits. We then discovered that I am not so good with remembering that VAT is a thing, and that I had actually not considered VAT when I put the grant in. But fortunately, I found another supplier that was cheaper, 20% cheaper, so the VAT thing was a problem. Remember, if you're a person who doesn't deal in construction stuff, VAT is a thing. They quote the prices without VAT, and it just had not occurred to me that that would happen. So that was a thing, but we got around it. So there are official suppliers of these parts. So I went to an official supplier that had the specific K2 phone box things, and we bought the things. And so then the various people working on the various jobs had the parts that they needed to do what they were doing. So what was interesting was the community response, because most people were like, oh, amazing, I've seen that this step has happened. Oh, wow, it's straight. And I set up a Facebook group so that people in the community could be a part of what was happening, rather than constantly asking me or what's happening to me or whatever. It was on there like, we've done this now and this is where we're at and this is the next stage. Can anyone help with this? So I was doing that, but people who were working on it, anytime someone was in place working on it, they were like, oh my goodness, like so many people stopped to ask me what was happening. And a lot of them didn't really know because they were just doing their job. And were like, but yeah, there was a lot of community interest. One of the things that was really, really frustrating was when the noisy work was happening, and it was only one day, people complained about the noise. And I was like, this thing has been in such a state for years and years and years, and you're upset for a day of noise when actually this is going to make this really lovely thing just near where you live, and the finished product is going to be brilliant. And you're upset because it's noisy. And yeah, I mean, it was noisy and it's annoying. Like if your next door neighbour has building work. The video I put up last week, I was moaning about building work. No, it was gardening next door. It's annoying, but it's one day. I mean, anyway, yeah, there was that. And there were complaints about the placement of things and the work going on, because people were used to cutting across grass as they walked past, and they wouldn't be able to cut across the grass. They'd have to walk on the path, I know I'm being eye-rolly, and I said I do respect people's opinions, I really do, but sometimes you're doing something to make a difference and then people complain and you think, well, help then, or get involved when we were planning it, or say, this is what's happening and it's happening because there was a consensus that this is what we're going to do. So, don't moan, no, it's happening. So anyway, there was a combination between excitement and moaning. And just anticipate, if you are doing a local community project, people always moan. They always moan. Everything I've ever done. You organise an event, people say they didn't know it was happening, even though you absolutely advertised the backside off of it. Or people say it wasn't good enough. Or people say, oh, well, if you'd only have done, you think, well, yeah, we'll come on the committee and organise it then. People always complain. They just do. So just be prepared. But yeah, people were super interested in what was going on as well. So there was that side of things. So I also was aware, and I'm sorry if any of these things are slightly out of order. This is just from my memory, and it took 3 years. I became aware that you needed a glazing person to do the glazing, that would not be done by the metal fabricator, and that the painting would need to be done separately. I kind of thought he would just like, ta-da, but no. So I had someone local who reached out and said, oh, actually, I'm a glazer and I'm available at the moment. I can do the glazing. But when it came down to it, they were not available. I could hardly contact them. This can be a problem either with community people who offer to do things, but also sometimes with work people, construction workers. That doesn't feel right either. People that they sometimes become uncontactable because they're busy, or sometimes they just don't really want to do the thing, and that's fine. So anyway, the trail for the glazing person ran away, and then I started ringing around and asking glazing people to come and look at it, and they said that because when the door had been put back in place, it was to do with the way, the order of things, and when the glazing bars had been put in. I don't know, I can't remember. I said this would be a helpful video. My point is do things in the right order, but essentially they were like, yeah, it kind of can't be done with the way that it is now. I spoke to my husband about it and he was like, rubbish, you can do it like this. I've put windows in. He's replaced windows in our house. He's like, you absolutely can do it retrospectively, and what you need to do is, and it was to do with you buy the putty, and then it had to be quite a lot of putty put in and then the pieces pushed in. And I would ring glazers and they'd say no, because basically they wanted to do it the correct way. If you're a glazer, you'll know what I'm talking about. I don't really know what I'm talking about because I'm an author. But it was to do with the way that you do it. And they don't want you coming back on them and say it didn't work. So what we ended up doing was, a friend of mine who's like a labourer, my husband said to him, look, this is what you need to do. Could you just do it? We'll pay you. And he did. Bless him. He was brilliant. He went and did it. And it is fine. It's been there for 2 years. No problem. The glazing's all still in place. It worked perfectly. And there was just one piece he couldn't fix. It was fiddly, and my husband went and did the last piece. So there was that issue. And again, it's that kind of ignorance on my part that I just didn't know what order things should have been in. And one of my frustrations is that the people I was working with, the professionals, I felt like should say, oh, by the way, you need to do this bit first, because I didn't know. So I think it's worth a conversation if you're doing a project like this and you don't know what you're doing, of saying to them, by the way, like, at what point should this bit happen? If you've got a timeline of this needs to be done, like we need the glass put in at some point, we need this fixed, this, and then you go to them and say, what's the order? Then they could say, oh, the glazer needs to come in at this point. You could be like, okay. So that was an issue that we had. But yes, the glazing happened then. And then my idea, and people had said this, so the metal guy, very kindly, I basically begged him, primed it. Once he'd sanded it, he primed it for me. And I was really grateful because I thought he was going to paint it. I thought that was in the quote, and I contacted him and he was like, no. And it was to do with the way he'd phrased something. I think he said it would be something about the finishing, and I'd read it as he was going to prime and paint it, and that was not what he'd quoted for. I just completely misunderstood. So he left it primed, and I reached out to the community, and people were like, why don't we have it as like a project for the Scouts or something like that? But the glazing was in place, and I was like, that's a lovely idea, but I don't think a Scout group are going to do the best job of painting this thing. Pretty sure the glass was in place. I know that there was a reason I didn't want the Scouts to do it. But sometimes you can do things like that. Like, I really suggest if you can get Scouts, or if you've got like a Rotary group, sometimes, you know, those kind of community organisations sometimes will be well up for coming out and doing something. So sometimes that works. I kind of reached out to the community and went, well, I have no money left unless the parish council help. Well, I've spent it all. I thought it was going to get painted and it's not. Help. And a friend of mine, a neighbour, he messaged and said, I'll do it. And I was like, okay, like I had a tiny amount of money left in the budget, and I was like, I've got this. And he went, don't be so silly, use that for something else. I was like, oh my God, so he did it completely for free. Not only did he do it for free, when he went there, he resanded some bits of it that the metal guy had done like a much quicker job. And I don't blame him, because he was doing something that I had not originally included in the quote. So he sort of did a nicer finish. He reprimed it. The areas he'd sanded. He then painted it, And I hadn't bought any gold paint for the little crown bit, and he went and got some gold paint and did a little gold crown on it, which was just, he did such a good job. It was so lovely, and for nothing. I think I was going to say I bought him a gift, but I suddenly feel like maybe I didn't. I hope I did. Did I? If you're watching this and I didn't, I owe you a gift. Yeah, what a lovely person. And you come across these lovely people, because I was just, by this point, this is years in, and I'm at my wit's end, because we had the whole thing with the builder where it didn't work. We had the electrics where I'd had to ask a favour of someone. We had the thing where I thought it was going to be painted and it wasn't. We had the whole issue around the glazing. It had become this thing where everything that happened, and partially because I was ignorant, right? I acknowledge that. But every single bit, I was like, oh. And also partially because I kind of, if I'd have had people on board who knew how to do it, which is what I thought would happen, then we may not have run into some of those issues, but we did run into them. So, and it was frustrating for me as someone who was working, and, you know, I've got 3 kids and this and that. I was really, really getting to the end of my tether. So then the whole thing was done, and then had to chase up having the shelves put in, their bespoke shelves, but the guy who did it's super busy, so trying to line up time. One tip actually, sometimes when there is something like this, especially when you're asking for a favour and you say, could you paint it, or please could you, the best way to approach it is, I've found, is to say, I'll come and do it with you. So a few things and a few community projects that I've done where it's been possible to is say, oh, I'll come and do it. Like, oh, do you want me to come and help put the bookshelves in, or do you want me to come and get them more? Sometimes it's presenting with a solution rather than a problem. So that tends to work quite well. Anyway, so the shelves went in, the planter went in, and the whole thing was looking really lovely. And then a member of our community, who's another doer, she had this great idea that initially I didn't recognise for such a good idea as it was, but she told the library all about it. And I think I felt a bit funny about, oh, I've done this thing that I don't know if it's going to affect how well used the library is. And the library is such an amazing community asset. Okay, I have just had to plug in because I ran out of battery, because we've been talking for so long. Sorry this is such a long rambly tale, but because it was so complicated and there was so much, I'm sorry, just a bird just went over the top. There was so much sort of interweaving and complications, and it's just one of those things. There was a lot of aspects to it, and I have a lot to say, so I'm really sorry it's a bit rambly. Yeah. Anyway, and yeah, this might have moved. Anyway, so yeah, I felt really awkward about the whole library thing, because I really didn't want to impact them with what we'd created with a book swap. And so my friend, she went to the library, just bowled in there and told them about it, whereas I'd been a bit like, oh, sorry. And she was like, we've done this thing, it's really amazing, and can you donate any books to get us started? Like, have you got all of your when they withdraw them from stock, have you got any of those? The library like, actually, yeah, we've got loads. And the library went and filled it. And I tell you why that was amazing. Firstly, libraries are just brilliant. But secondly, it meant that right from day one, when we said, yeah, it's finished, it was full, and it was full of really good books. Because the thing is, in a book swap, in any of these kind of things, people have a tendency to dump stuff. In the context of a book swap, it will be books that people don't want anymore, so maybe they're not very well known, so they're less likely to be taken again, or really niche. We've had loads of really, really niche stuff, or really damaged. I have also had people putting magazines, newspapers, DVDs, a lamp, like people just putting stuff in there. And there was a period where people were just getting big boxes and bags of books and dumping them on the floor. So I've had to be really outspoken about that not being okay, and point out that this is a community asset. This is not any one person's thing, because a lot of people come and tell me and be like, oh, someone's dumped so-and-so at the phone box, and I was like, I don't even live there anymore. That was part of the issue as well, was I was running this project, I didn't live there anymore, but people would tell me about it and say, oh, someone's dumped so-and-so, or it's a mess in there, and I'd be like, well, it's not my phone box. If I'm over that way, I'll have a look at it. But actually, we all need to look after this. And it's important that happens for this to move forward and people to still like it being in the spot that it's in, and people still to use it, and it, so if it ends up it's always full of rubbish, then people are not going to use it as a book swap, and so it will fall into disrepair again. So I use the Facebook group to sort of say, can anyone pop over there and give it a tidy, remind everyone that it is just a book swap. I had signs made that say books only, please do not leave other items, and just encourage people to pick it up. And I kind of said, look, if I tidy it up, then I have to throw all this stuff in the bin or take it to the charity shop or whatever's appropriate. And you guys can do the same thing. So if you know you're doing a charity shop run, for example, go and grab a handful of books from there if it's getting a bit full or whatever. And to be discerning about things that can just go in the bin. People are really funny about throwing away books, and I understand why. But if a book is really, really ripped up and no one's going to want it, it's okay to chuck it, and I have done it quite a few times. We do have repeat offenders who put, they are, because it's the same weird niche-y thing that gets put in there that shouldn't be in there. And you're like, oh, they've been again. And you also get certain local organisations putting literature in there. Or I had one particular one that really annoyed me. People started pinning business cards to the shelves, and obviously the shelves were handmade, bespoke, so I kind of kicked off about that a little bit. But what I found is that encouraging people, and myself doing it when I can, to keep it nice and have a clear out, and whenever I have those conversations, kind of go, well, would you mind giving it a tidy, or could you? And there are a number of individuals in the community who do, and because there's a number of us, means it gets done regularly. And so when people are there, every time I go there, I see a book that I have, I add to my collection for a bit, and then I pop one back. I use it all of the time. I'm not there regularly because I don't live there anymore, but I'm there like enough to be dropping books off and taking books. And what's so lovely is every time I am in that area, and again, I'm not there that much, every time I'm there, I see people using it. And for me, I was like, will people use it? Am I like one of the few bookish people? And like, how much will it get used? Genuinely, it's used so much, which is just brilliant. People are dropping off books, picking up books. And I think for those people who like buy books and then, drop them off, that's fantastic. And the library is still really, really strongly used, especially as a community space as well. And I think the library is a different thing because obviously the library have a different kind of collection of books. And I think there are people who are library users, and I think there are people who buy books and then maybe give them away, donate them to charity shops. And we don't have a charity shop near us, so it enables people to drop their books off, and then someone else in the community can pick those books up. And for me, it means people have got access to reading, even when the library is closed. That's the other thing. And I think that was part of sort of my passion around it following COVID, is that this can be a space. And obviously we had no issues with the people using it and the contamination and whatever, because by the time it was finished, COVID was properly over. But people can use that 24 hours a day, and the library has limited opening hours. So that's fantastic that we have both, and they don't seem to have affected each other. And I love that. And I think the things that are key are that it is seen as a community thing. So people look after it, and that was really, really important for it moving forward, for people to have that responsibility and to foster that attitude of, if we see things that need doing, we do them. We don't just go, somebody ought to, or, that's Emma's problem. It's our community's problem, and it belongs to us. It's not mine, it's the parish council's. It's ours as a thing to use going forward, and the only way we can continue to use it is if we look after it. And I think that is a valuable thing, as well as the swapping of knowledge, and the it's beautiful. It's really lovely. Every time I see it, I'm like, oh, it looks so nice. And the duck pond's all done. There's billions of ducks, and it's really lovely, and it really brings a smile to my face. But I know that it stands for something bigger, if that makes sense. And for me as a person, I'm a person that as I walk around and I see that a bin is full, then I report it, and so someone will come out and empty it. And if I'm walking around and I see litter, this is one I do every day. If I see litter, I pick it up and I go and take it. I am actually known for it. People comment on it. One of my old neighbours used to be like, every time I see you, you've got handfuls of rubbish. And someone the other day, I picked up a load of stuff and I was looking for a bin, and this guy came over, took it out of my hand and said, I'll go and put it in the recycling at home. I saw you pick it up, thank you. Like, it's really nice. Again, litter can build up because people go, oh, someone's bin blew over, so they ought to go and pick that up. Someone ought to. And again, just pick it up. If there's nothing sharp or whatever, just pick it up. And again, do you know what? I'm being worryingly nice about my husband in this video. To credit him again, I learned this from him when we were first married in our old house. Where we lived, there used to be a bit of a fly tipping problem, and we would report big things. And, you know, but some people used to literally drive up, open their doors and just throw all the rubbish out of like the cab of their van or whatever it might be. And there just used to be loads and loads and loads of litter, and sometimes sort of bigger bits, but not like a sofa, you know. And my husband would go down there, he would litter pick, he'd fill up big bags of it, and he would also, if there was like a big, I don't know, something like a car bumper or something, he'd go and pick it up, throw it in his boot and go, I'm going to the tip in a couple of days, I'll take this as well. And I used to say to him, this is not your problem, this is, the council should deal with this, somebody else. And he was like, why? It's done now, we want to have it nice. There's no problem in me doing it. I don't mind doing it, and I'm sick to death of driving past it. And at the time, I didn't see it, and now I am 100% on board with him, and I'm so grateful that I learned from him that don't keep thinking it's somebody else's problem. Yes, the council have a responsibility to deal with litter and stuff, right? And yes, fly tipping should be reported because we need to know there's a problem. But these things can take months to get dealt with. And why not just make where you are nice? And if you don't deal with these things, if people in the community aren't dealing with it, what happens is it gets worse because people go, oh, it's horrible here, and they care less. And so it becomes worse and worse and worse. And that, as I say, is part of the thought with the phone box, is let's make this lovely, and then people take care of it, and people have pride in this little area, and people enjoy it. It's really important, and it makes people smile, and they like where they live, and they talk to each other while they're at the book swap. You know, it's little things. Picking up litter, it's just a little thing. And if anything from this video, so hopefully, I don't know whether in that ramble any of that was useful. If you're renovating a phone box, or if you're thinking of making a book swap, frankly, the main takeaways are look for a grant, fundraise if you can, and if, you know, cake sales, coffee mornings, those things are super popular where I am. Quizzes, oh my goodness, you can make a fortune running a quiz to fundraise for something where I live. And I'm sure you'll have things like this in your community where you could put something together, but it takes a lot of work. A grant is just an application form. So apply for grants, see what you can get, fundraise if you need it, see if you've got the support of something like the parish council. And yes, they did support us financially a couple of times when we needed for the whole project. They were fantastic. You know, just, I would say, try to get a grant, fundraise, get your local organisations involved, so your council and any organisations who can help you and get stuck in. Try to get a committee, doesn't always work. We as doers, you know, just got to do it and not worry about the fact that other people kind of don't have the time and the motivation. That's okay, it's just a thing. Get your community really involved and interested, and explain to them what's going on and why it's important and why we're doing this. And so then they're on board and they take care of it and they care about it. Don't worry about the people who moan. People will always moan. And that's kind of overall the process. If you're doing a phone box, I will drop below a couple of links that I found helpful. Definitely one for a supplier that I used. You know, use your local, whoever it might be, builders, metal fabricators, glazers, I don't know, all the electricians. Use those people, and again, try to plow into your local resources, and you would be surprised. If I would put on the Facebook group, I have no idea who to contact, help, and I'd be sent phone numbers. So while I say that there is not necessarily, people weren't on like a little committee with me, people absolutely, if I reached out and said I don't know what to do, they would come up with ideas or put me in touch with people. So ask if you need help. Ask your council if you need help, ask your local community groups if you need help, and bring people together and have those conversations. The only thing I wish I'd have kind of known what I was doing a little bit more, and it would have been a bit quicker, but also I wish I had intentions of having a launch at the end and inviting a local celebrity because I thought it'd be fun. There are a couple of local celebrities. I think everyone's got like their local famous person that I was like, oh, I'll invite them along and do a phone box opening. That would be so fun. Have stickers and I don't know. But frankly, I was so just jaded at the end of the process. I never did it. But we did have a bit of it's ready for use now, and people were really excited by it. So, and it's lovely to have seen the impact, and it's really reinforced what I believe. If nothing else from this video, please take away. If you've made it this far, my God. But yeah, the takeaway is, if you find yourself saying somebody ought to, just do it. You know, if you go, oh, the grass has got really long, somebody just go mow it. You know, if people have been really bad with litter, just go pick it up, or arrange a local litter picking thing. You know, our local area use Duke of Edinburgh people, and they do it as a voluntary service. So why not suggest it, or just do it yourself? You know, the world would be a slightly better place, despite all of the, if people saw problems in their communities and instead of thinking somebody else ought to deal with it, they just did it. So yeah, it's something I try very hard to live by, and I can't do everything. And oftentimes I see things and I think I haven't got the capacity or the skill set. I suppose the fact that I'm talking about this phone box illustrates that I didn't have the skill set. I also didn't really have the time, but I did it, and I am ridiculously proud of it. And I love the resource that we created. And yeah, I just think, just catch yourself saying it, notice, and I think it all goes from there. Anyway, this has been the longest video in the world. If you're still here, comment below, I made it to the end. And you get 1,000,000 points for being so dedicated to this video. Thank you so much. I hope it was helpful to someone out there, and I would love to make more content, hopefully less rambly content, about community and ways that we can get involved and work together. Because whilst I'm a writer and I write about caring about our environments, very much like my core beliefs are in that we should, if we care about the small things, if we care about local and community and neighbours, and if everybody tackled that, I mean, just imagine. So anyway, thanks for watching. Please hit like, leave me a comment. Thanks so much, and I will see you all soon for another video. Take care.